Okay, so we're running this race with perseverance, going through Hebrews 11 and 12, and the section that we'll be talking about, with your interview and podcast and stuff is the part that says, "Fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who ran the race before us and endured the cross." Right, and that same word. It's interesting for endure. Is let us keep enduring because he endured. And so part of it is looking at the passage and context of our lives. So thanks for coming and being willing to share your life with us a little bit. And so first question, kind of give us, you got 3 minutes or less. Tell us your whole life in 3 minutes or less.
Okay, I'll try to condense it for you. I was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
Oh, okay.
And my mother converted to Judaism to marry my father, my genetic father. He passed away when I was 11 months old. She remarried, and we migrated to Los Angeles in 1963. So I'm really a U.S. citizen. I am naturalized, but I was basically raised in California.
Okay.
I knew when I was 14 that I was going to get out of L.A. So
a lot of people growing up in LA say the same thing. Okay.
And school was my vehicle.
Okay.
So I went to Cal Poly, and after my first year at Cal Poly, I decided I would go back to LA for the summer and have my last one big fling, have a fun summer.
Yeah.
Because then I was going to hit the books and go to school till I graduated.
Right.
So I would be in the summer school.
Okay.
For the last 3 years of school. And that's when a life-changing event happened. It was in 1978, and I was in a motorcycle accident. One of many, but it was the final. Okay. It was the final one that got me off the bike for good. And I lost the use of my arm. I was paralyzed from basically the chest over, the sternum over on my right side.
Okay.
So I tore all the nerves right from the spinal cord.
Wow.
In that accident. Fortunately, I had a couple buddies with me. It happened at 2 a.m. in Beverly Hills.
Wow.
And you would think that it would have been a nice doctor that had hit me, but it wasn't. It was a kind of an indigent person.
All right.
And it was 2 a.m. So I had buddies knocking on doors in Beverly Hills trying to get an ambulance to me.
Wow. Yeah, this is pre-cell phone days and all that.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Okay.
And so I ended up in the hospital, was at Cedars-Sinai, and they couldn't do anything for me except to stop the bleeding. Ended up in USC County, and I woke up for a short time because I don't remember 3 days before or after.
Oh, wow.
From the accident. Those days are blank.
Yeah.
But I do remember my brother there, and he said, "Well, Dave, Mom's trying to get you out of here because you've got a knife wound next to you and a bullet wound on the other side of you."
That's a county hospital.
That was a county hospital.
Yeah.
So I ended up in Santa Monica at St. Joseph's Hospital.
Okay.
I think it was St. John, St. Joseph. It's been a while, right? And there, it was kind of interesting. I spent a total of 6 weeks there.
In the hospital recuperating.
I was in ICU for about 3 weeks of it, and 3 weeks in the hospital. I did go back for a 10-hour exploratory because they did a nerve transfer on me.
Okay.
And that was in the early stages of days of neurosurgery, actually.
Okay.
Back in 1978. And there was a roommate, and he had the 4 laws with him. I don't know if anybody remembers the 4 laws.
4 spiritual laws.
The 4 spiritual laws. And it was through Campus Crusade.
Okay.
For Christ. And he said, "Hey, what do you know about Christ?" And I said, "Really not a whole lot. However, kindergarten through 3rd grade, I was at a parochial school.
Okay.
And my folks did put us in a Sunday school at a Baptist church.
Okay.
But I think that was more for my dad's business, to generate business than anything else.
You're a little networking.
Yeah. And
so the 4 spiritual laws. So you just had a smattering. You didn't have any real kind of introduction to faith and all that.
No, I really didn't. So I read it with him just to get him off my back.
Yeah.
Really. What was really interesting, I go back and I thought about that 4 laws probably 30 years later.
Yeah. And
that was probably when I actually did accept Christ.
Huh.
Because of the circumstances that happened afterward. I went back to school after a quarter. I only missed a quarter of school. And the only place that was available for me at the apartment complex I was looking at was with this one fellow who happened to have a roommate, and it was a lifelong friend of his, who who was in a motorcycle accident, and he didn't make it back to school.
Oh, wow.
So I filled in that spot.
Oh, wow. One accident for another. There
Right.
you go. Okay.
And he was a Christian, a Christian man. But at that time, I didn't even think about my faith at all, really. But he had a bunch of roommates, a bunch of friends that were in Campus Crusade.
Okay.
And they would come and visit. And so I basically just kind of brushed them off for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then they asked me to be roommates with them. And so through that process, 9 months of praying for me, I finally did make a real commitment to Christ.
Okay.
And it was with Billy Graham on TV.
Yeah.
But my roommates were there praying for me at the same time.
That's very interesting.
So it was kind of, And through Campus Crusade, I met my wife.
Okay. So tell us about that. Like when you first met and how many times she told you no or whatever.
Well, so she tells me that I met her in a chemistry class in 1980 prior to meeting her at Campus Crusade. But I don't remember it. And she used to help me open bottles with my one hand.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were at a summer meeting, and she was looking at albums, and we just started up a conversation.
Okay.
And our little group of Campus Crusade people were invited to go to her house for a party, a get-together. And I met her parents. They invited me up to the house. And so there began our relationship, basically.
Okay. All right. So you had to meet the parents first.
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
They were easygoing.
Okay.
I really enjoyed them.
Nice.
There are a lot of what I'm keeping my faith strong.
Yeah.
Is from them.
Okay.
So on September 6, 1980 was our first date.
Okay.
I missed a roommate's wedding to take her out on.
Wow, she must have been a keeper then.
42 years later, here we are.
Nice. So when did you get married?
In 1983.
So I want to go back to your accident there a little bit, and this idea of running your race. Sometimes in life, I mean, God always watches over us. We don't always acknowledge him or see him, right? But we learn from the scriptures. Yeah, he's got my first day, my last day, and every day in between. So for you, you're young, you're immortal, right? Before the accident,
absolutely,
because you've had other accidents, but they were scrapes or whatever. They didn't kill you. Now this one happens. What's going through your head and your mind at that time? What are you thinking? What got you through that time? How did you process all that?
I just kept waiting for the next day.
Oh, okay.
Because each day I thought I'd be closer to being healed. Getting the use of my arm back, the feeling of my arm, the pain would go away. Because I have phantom pains.
Okay.
And back when it first happened, they were excruciating.
Yeah.
The pain was almost unsurmountable.
So you had the pain nerves, but not the movement.
They're called phantom pains.
Yeah.
So, but they are physiologically painful.
Okay.
So I didn't have the nerves.
But you just were feeling the pain.
And it's in my hand.
Huh.
That I don't have any nerves to.
Okay. That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay. I've heard of that, but
yeah.
So you were experiencing that.
I was,
Wow. Okay.
And
so you're waiting for it to get better, and
it never was getting better.
Okay.
I just kept myself busy, and I had a goal. My goal was to get back to school.
Okay.
And I used, I never became addicted, but I did use, narcotics to help the pain.
Okay.
To ease the pain.
Did you ever get depressed or discouraged, like just go into a hole because I used to be able to do this, I can't do this now, or what?
Yeah, because I was a very active, youthful person.
Yeah.
I did sports. Not organized sports, but I rode bicycle. I played a lot of tennis.
Yeah.
I would do a lot of body surfing.
Yeah.
I lived at the beach that summer pretty much. So I was very active.
Yeah.
And also riding the motorcycle. So
yeah,
I did. I think I did go into a big, deep hole thinking that my goals were going to have to change.
Yeah.
Because I was planning on becoming a veterinarian.
Okay.
And I thought, there's no way I can do this now.
Yeah.
And what am I going to do?
Okay.
So I had a lot of questions about what's next.
Yeah.
What's the next thing?
Yeah. Because you think about it, as you get older, it makes sense when you start being able to, you lose some of your abilities, right? You just lose strength, but when you're young, that's not supposed to happen.
Right.
And so what helped you kind of make that transition to, I can't do that? So
I don't remember it transitioning, just doing.
Okay.
That's really what it was at the time.
So whatever was in front of you, you
I
just kind of did the next thing.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
That's exactly what
That's kind of, I think about long distance running. You get out 8, 10, 12 miles, right? You're far away from the beginning and you're far away from the end. What's left? One step at a time. You just got to stay in that.
Right.
And so for you, then kind of your life started to unfold. You started to see.
When I went back to school, I tried biochem. I'm transferred from animal sci pre-vet to biochem, and that was not my cup of tea.
Okay.
And then I went into social sciences.
Okay.
And with a business minor involved in it. And I ended up with an accounting degree.
Okay.
Transferring to Fresno State.
Okay.
To get into school business there.
But you ended up as a teacher.
As a teacher.
Okay. How'd that happen?
You know, it's interesting. When I was in college, I took those interest tests. I could never come up with an accountant. And I would cheat, and I would try to make it. I wanted to know what kind of personality.
You try to slant it towards what you thought
what an accountant was.
Yeah, yeah.
And they never came up. What came up were teacher, pastor, social worker. And so that's where I ended up. I ended up in Sacramento because of accounting, because I worked for the Franchise Tax Board. Okay. And I didn't like it. I didn't like doing income tax audit.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then, so then what made you then move to teaching? How did that happen?
When my son was born.
Okay.
When my son was born, I gave it a lot of thought, and I thought, I'm not going to be wealthy, but I'm going to have time with my kids.
Oh.
And so that's really what it was. When he was born, I thought my time with him is more important than, making a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So
good choice, I think.
I think so. He's grown up to be a good man.
Yeah.
So. And
that's my philosophy is you don't have to make a lot of money. Find people who do and become friends with them.
Right.
Then you can use their stuff.
Yeah.
And you can have a good life still.
That's so true.
So your faith life then kind of kicked off in college time,
It was college, yeah. Right.
Is that?
Yeah, I became a member of the group, the Campus Crusade for Christ movement.
Okay.
And that's where I met my wife, of course, prior to. And my lifelong friend that I have, he actually knows me longer than anyone else outside of my brother.
Okay.
I've known him 40 some odd years now, 45 years.
Wow. Nice.
And he lives in Bakersfield.
Okay.
That wonderful place.
You must have done something wrong, but I always think that. Yeah. So in those years of, kind of since college and that, you talk about running the race with perseverance is more of a marathon than a sprint, and there's times when you kind of wonder, why am I doing this, or in the midst of that, what are some times that you struggled? It could be just spiritual dryness, or something it didn't make sense, and some times that you felt like, I could see God humming in my life. So ups and downs. So anything stand out to you along the way?
I've been pretty blessed considering what I deal with. Yeah. I mean, I never thought that I would live out in the country. It was always a dream. I wanted to always be a cowboy, kind of, even though I'm more of a suburban cowboy. Yeah. God's blessed me in many ways in that respect. Where one of my more difficult times is the dealing with the aspect of pain and the constantness of it, because it's 24/7.
So you still have the phantom pains in that?
Oh, yeah, like as we speak.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
But I've learned to deal with it, basically. Okay. And it's really been by God's grace that I've been able to deal with it. What I call my two seasons. And it always seems to be in March and October time period. Okay. And I always attribute it to the earth moving away from the sun and getting closer to the sun. Okay. Gravitational pull.
And the pain kind of...
It gets bad.
Yeah.
It can get bad, and I can crawl up and just go to bed sometimes.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it's so bad. It's so bad. So it's by God's grace that I have the pain. Okay. And I'm actually thankful for it, because if I didn't have the pain, I wouldn't know I had the hand there, and who knows what happened to it. In many respects.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I know where my hand is in space because of the pain.
Wow.
Even though I have no nerves really going to it.
Yeah. I think of Paul saying, right, the thorn in my flesh was given to me, that I could recognize God's strength and grace. And that's interesting. The pain is given to you to say, that's still here.
It's still here, yeah.
Wow. So in your faith life, as you're walking along, what are some victories or times where you sense, like you said, God's grace is given to you other places as you've...
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of them was like finding out that my brother was a Christian.
Okay.
Because now we talk about it.
Tell me about that.
When he was married, he married a Catholic.
Okay.
And so he became involved with the Catholic Church. But to me, it was more of just going through the process.
The formality.
Of it.
Okay.
And he has since been divorced, and he kind of went through a whole growth process.
Okay.
And I watched that growth process.
Okay.
And he went to the church. He actually found solace in the church.
Okay.
And through a group of guys who 20 years later he still meets with.
Oh, wow.
At the church.
Yeah.
So
there's that pain, right, in recovery kind of thing. The pain drives you closer to God.
Yeah.
And he uses that. Wow. So when you talk now, how's that conversation go?
We just talk about what God's doing in our lives, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
And how I'm dealing with things, and I'm on a journey myself right now because after retirement, we had COVID right in that process. I've never really had the opportunity to explore what I wanted to do in many ways. I was involved with making sure my daughter got through college.
Yeah.
And then we also did a refurbishing of our house, remodeling. And that was a long nightmare.
And you're still married.
And we're still married.
That's successful.
Yeah. But I've had a lot of blessings in the fact that I can do just about anything that most normal people do. I don't play basketball. I don't play football.
Yeah.
I ride a bicycle. I still played tennis. I still did a lot of things. Still did my backpacking.
Yeah.
I still fish. And a lot of people say, "How do you fish?" Well, I have to show you. I'm not going to explain it.
Yeah. It's like, what's a one-armed fishing pole look like?
Yeah, the same as a two-armed.
Yeah, nice. So as you get older, you had this disability, which hasn't disabled you. How does that work in your life now as opposed to earlier on? Is it just like, hey, this is just what I do, or is it harder now, or how do you see that now?
Yeah, as a result of the accident, I paralyzed my diaphragm.
Okay.
Half of it. So it affects my breathing.
Okay.
And my doctor told me when I was younger, he said that when you hit your 60s, things are going to change for you.
Okay.
And they did. And I didn't know that's what it was what was going on with me. I thought, I've gained weight. I've slowed down.
Yeah.
I have asthma, but I actually have to use oxygen now. So
Okay.
I'm on oxygen therapy, and it's a result of the diaphragm being paralyzed.
Okay.
The half of it, and so it's created more problems as a result. So I always think, God, why me, right?
Yeah.
Or why? You always ask the question, why?
Yeah.
And I keep thinking it's so that He can show more grace to me. I really believe that part of my journey led me to where I am today, and the people that I have around me now that support me in the church. So I went to a Catholic elementary school.
Okay.
For 4 years, and then went to an EV-free church,
Okay.
and then from the EV-free church I went to a Orthodox church, Eastern Orthodox church,
Okay.
and from that I went to a Lutheran church.
Okay.
So I've been involved with the Lutheran church now since '92.
Okay.
So what is that? 33 years.
Yeah. So from a Lutheran perspective, it took you a little while to evolve.
Okay.
To get there. So I mean, to me, it's powerful when you say, right, that in your difficulties and the struggles, that God's grace is more fully extended to you, right? That you see that and you get that. How does that look or feel to you when you, like in practical ways? What's it look like? Is it a spiritual piece? Is it something is it a change of mind, an attitude?
It's almost all of those, because it is a spiritual piece, and it's just a piece about me, a calmness, and knowing that tomorrow's going to come and you're going to make it and you'll be just fine.
Yeah.
And you're in the now, and just be with me. And I know that I'm God and I'm with you. So when we went to the practices, the theme was, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And it's so true.
That's kind of the theme of your life.
It is the theme of my life. I garden a lot, and that's when I do a lot of my talking to God.
Yeah.
and praying. I'm not alone.
So when the doctor said in your 60s things are going to change, and everybody says that to us, right?
Right.
And I remember like going through 40s, 50s, and the same thing, like 60 hertz. It's bam. But you have this thing as well, right? And so what's like the prognosis? You're on oxygen. What's the doctor say about?
We're still finding out.
Okay.
I just went through a bunch of testing in the last couple of months. And I have my appointment next week in 2 weeks.
Okay. So, any anxiety there? Any fear, apprehension, or?
No, I just need answers. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
I don't fear anything really about it. I just want to know why.
Okay.
Why now? Why not in my 50s?
Yeah.
What was going on? What's different now? What do I need to? Is there anything I can do?
Okay.
To help alleviate the issue?
Yeah. Yeah.
So one thing they do say is, lose weight. Right?
They always say that.
They always say that. It's that and drink water. So.
Well, beer has water in it.
Yeah, it does. A lot of it.
And just an editorial note, Terry, if you're watching this, he has his oxygen with him. We're okay. So you don't have to make any phone calls.
We'll edit it if we need to.
There you go. So no matter what the report comes back, as you're telling me, God's promise to you is?
That I'm with you.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So if you could talk to your 20-year-old self, knowing what you were like at 20 and what you've learned over the years, what 2 or 3 things would you say to you? What words of encouragement, advice, whatever? You can't tell them who to bet on the Super Bowl like later on.
Okay.
No, it's more, maybe I wish I would have known this, or this is something I learned that I wish I would have learned earlier.
Listen to the wisdom of your elders, number one.
Okay.
Probably because I wouldn't have been on a motorcycle, maybe. Seek out what's important in life, the importance of those things that are important. And for me now, looking back, it would be knowing God more, at a younger age, not waiting until I was 20 to figure it out.
Yeah.
God's been good, and that's why.
Yeah.
Not that it has been easier. I'm not saying it's been easier, but I've been able to cope with it.
Okay.
Christ has given me a purpose. People always say I'm a good example for others, and I don't know how, because I just live my life.
Yeah.
And I don't go outside of that really. I'm a quiet person.
Yeah.
I keep to myself a lot, and that's who I am.
That's something I think if you're a lifelong Christian, especially Lutherans, because they're quieter usually about their faith, is we don't recognize the power of the Holy Spirit to witness just in normal everyday things, right? And that's God showing up in us, right? In spite of us or with us.
Yeah, I have opportunities, and I've used, and I've taken advantage of it where someone looks at me and says, that's really inspiring. Like if I'm at the gym, here I am with the sling on, and I've got this oxygen tank with me. Like, that's great. And I said, well, if it wasn't for the Lord, I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
That's kind of my last question, and we're kind of segueing into that. If somebody said, okay, so you're a Christian, you've had this lifelong experience with the Lord, what are maybe a Bible passage that stands out to you, a Bible story, what would kind of encapsulate what you say, hey, this is the focus of my faith, this is kind of the thing that moves me the most? What would you say?
I always read Psalms 23.
Yeah.
So.
And what about that?
Well, it encompasses everything that you need to run the race, really.
Okay.
And it's comforting me. It comforts me. It grounds me.
Yeah. The Lord is my shepherd. There's that presence again.
Yeah.
And that everything I need, He's going to provide. The still waters and the field and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
Overflowing cup. Nice. Very good. Well, let's close our time with the word of prayer. Okay. Father, we give you thanks and praise for your goodness always. I thank you for your grace in Dave's life and opening his eyes and heart early on to see it and then to live and walk by it. Our race hits hard spots sometimes. Sometimes it's slightly uphill. And I think about Dave's pain all the time, and yet your grace eases that pain and helps him to cope. So I can pray that you continue to bless him, keep him. Thank you for his faith, for his joy, for his quiet way that always brings glory to you. We give you thanks and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.